What if we named things for what they're not? We'd give teachers non-oranges and fly non-cars. That sounds ridiculous, right? So why is your world-changing organization called a non-profit? The truth is, you are for purpose. And the more you raise, recruit, and retain, the more good you can do. That's where Bloomerang comes in. Bloomerang's giving platform is built for purpose with easy to use tools and powerful insights that will help you understand your donors better than ever and unleash even more generosity. Imagine spending less time on admin tasks and more time on what matters, your mission. Bloomerang customers raise an average of 26% more. Are you ready to join them? Then just visit jcsocialmarketing.com/Bloomerang to learn more and start making an even bigger impact. That's jcsocialmarketing.com/BLOOMERANG. Let's get to the episode. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Hi, everyone. This is Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell. The question we're answering today: how do you get real people, especially those deeply embedded in their communities, to amplify your cause in a meaningful way? Traditional influencer marketing often focuses on celebrities, but micro influencers, everyday people with strong, trusted networks, are proving to be far more effective for building lasting engagement. And this week, I'm joined by Ryan Davis, co-founder and COO of People First, a company that identifies, recruits, and manages content from diverse communities by blending technology with human organizing. And today, Ryan's going to share how nonprofits, advocacy groups, and mission-driven brands can tap into micro-influencer marketing at scale to reach the right audiences with the right message. So, Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on, Julia.
That's amazing. So you started out on the Howard Dean campaign. I really liked Howard Dean.
I did. What
was that like?
It was a super cool experience. I mean, it was obviously very early social internet. So, a lot of groups and kind of communities like that. And then meetup.com was a big one, and obviously email and the blog. So it was cool. I definitely learned more in that year than I have in other decades.
That's amazing. And then you founded People First. So what inspired you to co-found People First? And what gap in the marketing world were you looking to fill?
Yeah, so I had, after the Dean campaign and Obama, I went to Blue State, started the social media department over there. So spent a lot of time working at nonprofit and other sort of advocacy social media. And then, in about 2019, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and was talking to a friend of mine, Curtis Hoagland, and we were, we thought it was really interesting that there wasn't a influencer marketing company dedicated to, advocacy and politics. And we looked around, and it seemed like the commercial sector was really engaged with influencers and starting to do a lot of interesting things, but there wasn't somebody doing that specifically in the social impact space. And so we started People First, and, primarily focused at that point on democratic politics. And then the pandemic happened, and we expanded pretty quickly into public health and other sort of social impact.
So can you define precision micro influencer marketing for those of us that don't understand what it is?
Sure. So I think when you picture an influencer in your head, you might picture somebody who is, into beauty or travel or some sort of lifestyle. Maybe they live on the coast, they're young, they're beautiful, and certainly that represents like a lot of creators that we work with, but we think that sort of everybody has influence. So we are looking for people who, match the affinities and demographics and geographies of the people that an organization is looking to reach. So, when we work with the Democratic Attorney General Association in Montana and they want to talk about the importance of public lands and work with Native Americans, Native American creators in Montana are not sort of available on these, commercially available platforms. You've got to go out and actually find and recruit these people. So by precision, we mean the ability to be very targeted in the types of folks that you're collaborating with.
And this is different from traditional influencer marketing, which people might be familiar with.
Yeah, I think it's related, but it is definitely much more focused on getting the exact right messenger, when you go out and you make that piece of content.
So why do you think that micro influencers often have a stronger impact on engagement and action?
People are more likely when they're following a micro influencer, and we think of that as somebody with between 2 and 20,000, followers on their main social platform. And, that person, has a much stronger connection with their followers. They're probably in the same community. Maybe they have the same profession. They share a lot of affinities. So you've got a much closer bond than, somebody who's got 1 million followers. So when we look at, these smaller creators, these micro influencers, they tend to have higher engagement rates, more comments, and generate sort of more authentic engagement than these larger creators.
I think the big question for a lot of nonprofits, a lot of organizations, how do we identify and recruit the right micro influencers? And I know that's something that your platform does. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so I think, we're looking for certain keywords, certain bio words, certain locations. So, there are definitely tools out there that are available to kind of search and look around for creators. But we have a technology that identifies people. And then we have an organizing team, digital relational organizers who go out into the internet and, onboard and collaborate and vet these folks to work with. So when an organization works with people first, you might get a few creators that we've worked with before, and then you might get a few creators that are, have never done a project before, but were just perfect fits for this campaign. And so this is going to be their first sort of paid collaboration.
What makes this kind of influencer-driven campaign successful? What are some of the most essential elements needed?
It's a great question. So, I always say try to give the creator as much creative space as possible. When we collaborate with a creator, we've worked on a creative brief with the organization that is sponsoring the campaign. So, that's got the general creative direction, the messaging, the call to action, the really important stuff, but we're leaving as much creative space as we can to the creator. You're going to get much better content that way. I think not just focusing on follower count, really making sure that the creators you're working with are the right people to tell your story, that they're going to reinforce sort of your message. And then sort of setting realistic expectations. If your goal is to raise $1 million and you partner with 5 micro influencers, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if your goal is to communicate with people who live in a specific place about something your nonprofit is doing or something you want to get out into the world, you're going to have a lot of luck working with these smaller creators. And another thing I want to touch on, Julia, is sort of the paid media element of this, because what's really powerful is not just the content that goes live on the creator's profile, but it's taking that content and then repurposing it in your brand social, your paid media, maybe in a newsletter. But you can, use this as sort of bottom up creative approach.
I love that. Yeah, talk more about how we can use this content. Or actually, let's go back to the beginning. How do we approach an influencer and the word that I'm thinking of, that it's probably not the right word, is convince them to partner with us. So I know it shouldn't be like twisting someone's arm, because that doesn't sound right. But how do we make our advocacy campaign or our mission or our goal, how do we make it sort of like a win-win for them, and sort of like a no-brainer that they would help us amplify this message?
Yeah, so I think you've got to make sure you're approaching creators who are, valued, aligned with your organization. So you have a reason to think they're going to be interested. The campaign should be on brand for that creator, so it should make sense for that creator to be a part of it. If it's a creator who only makes content for children and you want them to do an educational video about a war, maybe it's not a good fit for that creator. Right. So they're probably going to say no. And then, we pay our creators, depending on the type of content they're creating and how many followers they have and what platform. But, we find that really helps, make sure the content is professional, make sure you have that ability to give feedback, make sure things are timely. But, like anything, it's asking a lot more people than you need. So, we might have to ask 100 people to find the 10 that we end up using on a campaign. So it's not always like everybody says yes.
That's true. And it's not a good fit. And the way I see it and the way I try to explain to my clients is it's a lot like grant writing. You have to probably send out more grants than you want, but you want the grantor to be aligned with your organization. Just because the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has billions of dollars doesn't mean they're necessarily aligned with your mission. So just because there is someone out there that has an audience that, you want to reach doesn't mean that they will necessarily be aligned with you and with your mission. And I think that's the key here, is finding someone that has that audience that you want to reach. It's not just sort of, okay, they have a random audience of random people and we just want to kind of spray out our message everywhere. It has to be really focused and targeted. So what are some of the sort of biggest mistakes that nonprofits make when they're trying to kind of run these campaigns and work with influencers?
I think the first mistake is to overscript the influencer.
I know. Yeah. We like to do that. We like to have complete control.
Yeah, we've seen campaigns where they've basically given the creator a 45-second script to read, and you don't get the most compelling performances that way. Yeah. So that's definitely the biggest mistake. I think focusing on only video is something I think is a mistake. We've seen campaign. We just ran a big fundraising campaign for a big health nonprofit, and what we found was the highest converting piece of content wasn't one of the videos. It was actually a carousel of still images on Instagram. So, while video is awesome, we make a lot of video. I think, having campaigns where you've got a variety of content types can really benefit your performance.
Which platforms should we be looking at in terms of finding these influencers, but also leveraging their content and sharing it out on our channels?
We think it's really important to be basically platform agnostic. So, if you're going after young people, you want to be on TikTok and Snapchat and YouTube. If you're looking to reach, baby boomers, you're probably going to be on Facebook and LinkedIn. So it's really about where is your audience, and then where are the creators who have built those audiences? Because all these platforms have creators who are doing really interesting things and have built audiences and often speak in very platform specific ways.
Yes, absolutely. I think so too. And I also think it really depends on, first of all, where the creator is, where the influencer is, and where they have their platform, but also where your nonprofit might want to grow and might want to, experiment and, have some more engagement and build a following and see what happens. So yeah, if you've never used Instagram before, maybe that's not the best place to start, but it might be something to explore later.
We helped an organization actually launch their TikTok by recruiting a bunch of creators to stitch with their launch video. So,
oh my gosh, tell me more about that. That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. So, the organization was, they were going to be new to TikTok. They didn't have any followers, so they went out and found creators who spoke to their audience, which was like young folks in big cities. And so we found some of those creators, and when they posted the video, the creators basically did a stitch, which tags connects you to that other video, and talked about the importance of the organization and why it was so exciting they were on TikTok. So things like that can be a really fun way to bring attention to a certain piece of content.
Exactly. I love that. And I want nonprofits listening to know you don't really have to have that tech savvy. You don't know how to do it, need to know how to do a stitch yourself. It's just giving access to that video and encouraging other people to use these features on their channels, I think is so important. And I also think it's important to recognize that right now, we can't just be talking into the void. We can't just be emailing our list and talking on our Facebook page and continually talking to our own audience. We really need a plan to expand our audience and to get in front of new people. I think this is so interesting. So one challenge I know a lot of groups face, how can advocacy groups just ensure that they stay kind of on their brand voice when they're working with influencers at scale? Like, how can we get more comfortable giving up control and giving up that script?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I try to work with clients on is not to prejudge an influencer or a creator before you've seen the content. So we actually find it really effective to, instead of giving a client a big lookbook with 100 creators and say, you pick the 20 you want to work with, that we go out and we find people we think are a great fit based on the conversations that we've had. And we bring not just the creator, but the content as well. So when they're looking at both, it makes sense, because often they'll say, well, I don't know how this creator is going to plug in. But then they see the content and they're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Of course, it makes so much sense. So, being able to show those things at one time, I think makes it easier to get through a lot of, approval processes.
Mm-hmm.
That said, we work with creators, we give them very specific calls to action. We have a do's and a don'ts section of the creative brief, which makes it really easy for them to understand what they can't say and what we encourage them to say. And then, there's a round of feedback. So nothing goes live without the approval of the client. So you do have that. You do feel good about what actually goes out there.
So are there any specific cause areas or issues where this kind of micro-influencer marketing has been especially effective?
We just ran this big fundraising campaign for our end of year, which was really interesting. It was, in the healthcare advocacy space. And we got a bunch of creators on Instagram Reels to talk about, how they were affected by cancer, and, whether it be them or somebody in their family. And then we took those pieces of content and we put them up against lookalikes of the donors to the organization. And we achieved a 315% return on ad spend from this campaign, because we were showing, really telling the stories of how people are affected in a really personal way with this call to action to this organization. And they were, blown away by the return on ad spend. So I think, in 2025, fundraising is something that creators can really be a part of, especially when you're blending it with paid media. I think some of the work we've done with our friends at Science Moms, where we've worked with people in very specific locations to talk about extreme weather in their area. I think having people report about what they're seeing, how their areas have changed, is really, a powerful way to kind of personalize that climate change message. It's not just about, what's happening in California. There's evidence of this happening all over the country. So I think, there's just lots of ways that you can bring this authentic, more people-driven kind of storytelling to really any vertical that is looking to sort of accomplish whether they be, programmatic goals, or just, fundraising and advocacy.
That campaign example is so interesting because nonprofits tend to be so focused on their own storytelling and collecting stories, impact stories from clients, and sharing those out on social media. And that's what they do for fundraising. And that's what they've always done. But tell me more about this campaign. So you said these were creators that were raising money for a cancer organization, just talking about their own experiences?
Yeah, talking about their own experiences
Interesting.
and tying it into the organization and giving very specific examples for what the money could accomplish. So $200 can help somebody get to an appointment, or X amount of dollars can feed someone dinner, hot meals for a week. So it's like, what is the tangible thing that the money that people donate kind of can actually help these folks who are dealing with this. So it was having those people who have either themselves been affected or cared for a family member be able to talk about that, which I thought was really powerful.
Right, because it makes it more about the cause and less about the specific organization.
Right.
And I think that's the shift that nonprofits need to make, is that people are talking about the implications of the issue and the implications of the cause in general, not your specific organization that's been around for 60 years.
Right. And I mean, even the paid media, right? We're boosting it from the creator's profile. So it's coming from @Julia as opposed to @organization. And that gives it like an extra layer of authenticity.
I know. I mean, people love to listen to people, and they do trust influencers. I read a statistic, something of like 80% of people on Instagram have either looked at a product or purchased something from an influencer that they trust. And I know that I have as well. And I know my daughter has on TikTok as well. But that's a place to, what people should also understand is these platforms are really great for discovery.
Oh,
and
definitely.
They're fantastic places for you to be discovered by people that don't know you, and for you to discover people that you haven't found. It's not really like a bubble where you know everyone and you're friends with everyone and collaborate with everyone. It's really sort of brand new perspectives and opinions, something that I think is really interesting.
And I think, folks who are, especially folks under 30,
Yes.
For them, social is search. So they're searching on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram for topics, for videos that they're going to watch. So, if you're not producing content on these platforms, then you're not getting your message out in the same way that if you didn't have a website, you wouldn't be reaching, folks over 30.
How do you measure success? I know every campaign is different, but what are some sort of KPIs and some measurement of success for these campaigns?
Yeah, so you get the standard digital KPIs when you work on a campaign with us. So you're going to see your engagement and your impressions and your share rate, and we do comment sentiment analysis, which can be very cool. But we've had the opportunity to run sort of bigger studies with some of our partners. So we ran a study in Virginia where we worked with a candidate, and we had content go live in support of that candidate. And then we worked with a bunch of creators who didn't publish anything. And we were able to ingest all their followers from both the control group and from the posters, and see that users who followed the posters had a much higher recall of Democratic messaging than users who didn't. So that showed that, people who were on Instagram were just much more likely to remember hearing about our candidate if they followed one of the creators that worked with us. And, it was a pretty big bump, something like 40% boost in recall. So it was statistically significant, and then, obviously when we're doing fundraising campaigns, we're focused on conversions, we're focused on return on ad spend, the sort of bread and butter numbers.
Wow, that's really great. I think that is so interesting, especially considering the times we're living in right now, when there's so much information coming at us and it's hard to know what's misinformation, what's true, what's real. And we trust the organizations that we follow and support, and we trust the influencers that we follow and support. So it seems like combining the two, especially right now, to get your message to cut through the clutter is really an effective strategy. So I think that's really interesting. How can small organizations use this? Should they be using micro-influencer marketing? Like, I'm thinking like a small food bank or a small library, a small arts organization.
I think, if you're a small organization like that and you have supporters who are active online, giving them more ways to support you, reaching out to them with materials to share, having calls and Zooms and meetings where you invite them to learn more and get more involved. All those can be really effective ways. In the same way that you would invite local media. Nowadays you should be inviting the local folks who write a Substack on your town.
I love that. I think that's a great way to reframe it. We used to have local reporters and local papers, at least where I live, but we don't anymore. But we certainly have people that do write blogs or are influential in the community, either on social media or, like you said, Substack, or maybe they have a blog on WordPress or they have a YouTube channel or something like that. So looking for these non-traditional methods of media rather than putting out a press release and hoping that some kind of, media outlet picks it up, looking at creators as not even the future, but the present of media.
And a lot of
people get their news from social media too.
Most definitely. There's research out just a few months ago from Pew showing just, more and more groups of people getting their news from these news influencers. And, in my hometown of Salisbury, Maryland, we have the local paper, which has been around for a while and has far fewer people working there than it did when I was a kid. But we've also got a handful of local blogs and, YouTube channels where people make like independent media about what's going on in town. And you'd want to be as much, probably more nowadays, you'd want to make sure you were getting talked about there.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. So we have to talk about AI. I don't know if AI features into this at all, but with AI generated content sort of becoming more prevalent, how do you see the future of influencer marketing evolving?
Yeah, so I think, we're building some AI into our platform, but I really think that in a world of a lot of artificial content, having a real person with a real backstory, with a real life who talk about your organization is going to be even more important. Yes. I think there's going to be a lot of AI content. Some of it will be good. A lot of it will not be good. I think that the platforms you already see this even with Meta, while they're doing a lot of things wrong, they are like making sure to label AI content, because it's like, it's a brand safety issue with them, frankly. They don't want to get sued. So they're labeling AI content. And I think people will start to see that labeled content and sort of glaze over it in a way. So having a video with a real person is going to matter even more.
Authentic content always works. And what I've been seeing more with my clients in terms of social media marketing, that perfect, polished content that you've been creating and putting out for so long is not going to perform as well as you sitting with your phone and just sharing an Instagram story about what's going on today. Like, what do the headlines mean? What is the relevancy of all of this? What can we do? What are 3 steps we can take today to end food insecurity, whatever it might be? And that kind of authentic content from a person, I agree, is the way that we're going to really cut through this AI sludge and cut through a lot of the cookie cutter content that's out there.
Most definitely.
If a nonprofit is listening right now and they're thinking, this all sounds great, but where do I start? What's your advice?
As you're doing your communications planning, it's time to start thinking about how to integrate influencer, into your digital comms program. And you can start really small with just having a creator to come to an event or reaching out to a creator or two to talk about something specifically that you'd like to promote. And then, you can go from there. We've worked on, really small campaigns that were impactful. And then we worked on campaigns where we've gotten, 700 creators to make pro-vaccine content. So I think you should feel safe and feel good about starting small, dipping your toes in the water, getting comfortable with the process, and then going from there.
Wonderful. And where can people find out about you and People First and more about the kind of services that you offer?
Yeah, so you can find us at peoplefirst.cc. I'll drop you the link for the show notes. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, and I publish a monthly newsletter called This Month in Digital, where I just talk about all the stuff you might have missed in the last month in digital strategy.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I need to be subscribing to that. Okay, so Ryan, thank you so much. I will put the links to all of that in the show notes so everyone can check it and get connected and sign up for that newsletter and learn more about micro-influencer marketing. But I really appreciate you being here today, sharing your expertise. Just thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.